Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, one and all, to this Cult Potato, the Cult Movie Podcast. As always, I am your host, Campion, and joining me today is my ever-faithful co-host, a man who, you didn't hear this from me, but he may or may not be appearing in court for 17 counts of indecent exposure. Mr. Grady Hooker, how you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely great. You did not hear it from you. That must have been somebody else. Quite possibly one of the hundreds of characters that appeared in Pufnstuf, because they all look like they might be going to court for indecent exposure.
They're going to court. They're going to court for a great deal of many things. But yes, as Grady said, we are doing the seminal classic, as Grady told me. Pufnstuf, the movie, also known as Pufnstuf Zaps the World, a musical comedy fantasy film produced by Sid and Marty Krofft Enterprises, who were known for a great deal of kids' entertainment shows back in the 70s. And this is a movie based on their very first show, and probably their most well-known, H.R. Pufnstuf. A show that a lot of people seem to know, but I've honestly never heard of till doing this episode, so go figure.
This is one of those very rare films that were going into it. I have seen the film, and Campion has not, and went in pretty much blind to this one.
Yeah, like I hadn't heard of Pufnstuf at all, and so I'm just like, oh, H.R. Pufnstuf, oh, that's an old kids movie. Hang on, just let me quickly Google that. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I told you to stop Googling it so that you could go in blind.
Yes, and I did that for the most part. I did because before we watch the movies, I do like to watch some of the trailers, just because this is how it was advertised to people, and I just find movie trailers, especially older ones, really interesting.
This one's a weird one.
Yeah. I thought, oh man, I don't want to spill myself too much. Watch the trailer. I don't think I was able to retain any of it, Grady. Could not tell you thing one about the trailer. In fact, right now, even though I literally just watched the movie before we got on to record, I'm having difficulty recalling the movie, Grady. It's just one old big Technicolor musical blur in my mind.
Wow. I remember this movie great. I took comprehensive notes.
Like one of us knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, it was, for me, the funniest part was that a lot of my movie watching from this time came from VCR, like home recording VCR tapes that my mum took of when the movie was on TV. And much like Willy Wonka, this one, I have not seen the first 5 minutes of this movie before, because when it got taped onto VCR, I guess my mum just started late or something.
Yeah, that's how it was back in the day. It's just like, oh, I want to watch this movie. Well, the first act isn't there, but I can make it up as I go along.
So, like, up until the part where he trips over at band practice, I had not seen this movie. And that cuts off a good 5 minutes of him trying to play the flute and being really bad at it, and sort of setting up of who this character Jimmy actually is. But to be fair, that first 5 minutes pales in comparison to the rest of the movie.
And what a movie it is. It's... Okay, on the movie, I'm looking at the movie poster right now. It says, A Wizard of Oz like fantasy. I haven't seen The Wizard of Oz, but looking at the costume designs for this film, Grady, it triggers some sort of, I don't know, primal survival instinct that I don't think I've ever really, even horror films, I don't think I've ever really had activated in the way that this film did. Do you know how long it took me to figure out that Pufnstuf was actually a dragon?
But he's Pufnstuf. He's the mayor. How did you not know he was a dragon?
Well, it's American, so it's mayor, Grady.
Sorry. It's very clear. He's
American,
a big yellow dragon.
This one aggressively British lad. Everyone else is American. But
he immigrated from England because his dad got a new job. Did you miss that part in the plot line?
In his business firm, yes, I remember. He used those. A child used those exact words. Yes, I like how it isn't a specific business; it's just business firm.
Yeah, they couldn't bother coming up with a good name for it.
It never shows up in the film, so I guess it isn't really an issue.
Oh no, family is not there. Unless, you want to deep dive into, what you believe was actually going through Jimmy's head as he makes up this entire fantastical story. And for some reason, his home life is so bad that he decides to find some psychedelic mushrooms in the forest and just chomp down on these shrooms, so he is absolutely as high as shit throughout the entire film.
And I'm sure I like many people who saw the title of this, did wonder if, because it was made in the 70s, Grady, so I don't think it's that far out to wonder if the title is a drug reference.
The creators have gone to such a level to refute that this is a drug reference. Like, I have seen interview after interview after interview that they claim that nothing in this movie was ever created as a drug reference. Not the name, not the characters acting high, or anything like that. And look, I don't care how much you refute it, I still struggle to believe it.
Okay, you're saying that, Grady, but there actually was a relatively recent interview where one of the creators actually did admit that, HR Pufnstuf.
We can't call it Pufnstuf, Campion, that's too...
that's a bit much. But HR Pufnstuf does mean hard-rolled Pufnstuf. It is a reefer reference.
Oh, they finally admitted it. My information was based on the last time I watched it.
It wasn't because they were like into drug culture or anything, and it was the 70s, so of course I don't believe them. But apparently it was just like a childish attempt to see what they could get past the network. The network execs did have some problems with the title, although not for the reasons you think. Apparently they just thought Pufnstuf just sounded a bit too feminine. It's just like, why would kids, tune out from Superman and Batman to watch Pufnstuf? But apparently they still went with it.
I guess it was one of those things, like, because my knowledge of those interview answers and stuff was from, when I would have watched it a little while ago. They probably so wanted to believe, and wanted everybody else to believe that there was nothing, that they would have just lied and lied and lied. And so if, they're finally coming to terms with the fact that, like, what everybody else already knew, it is very much a drug reference.
I mean, what else could HR I keep calling it Huffin. What else could HR Pufnstuf stand for other than hard roll?
I got no idea at this point. I'm sure there was some lies that they threw around, to tell the network execs when they asked that exact same thing. But man, this movie was a trip.
In the context of the story, do you actually know it? Because I don't. Do you know what HR Pufnstuf stands for?
I got no idea, no.
Yeah, me neither. So, I just like to think that his name actually is just hard-rolled. That's from birth. That's what his parents decided.
It's, I'm sure it's not the case, but it could be the case.
Okay, Grady. So, give us a Give us a lowdown on the story of this film.
Alrighty, so there's a kid called Jimmy. He's a English chap, and he's having a little bit of trouble in the real world. At band practice, he's missing it, and then he does a sing and dance in the forest, and his flute all of a sudden turns solid gold with diamonds on it and starts talking. And then he hops on a talking boat that gets intercepted by a witch, turns it evil, and he ends up jumping off the boat, drowning to death, and the movie fades to black.
And so what actually happens in the movie, Grady?
Well, that entire first part, but then instead of drowning, he comes back, still high on mushrooms, and talks to a dragon for the next hour. Do you want me to actually recap the movie, because you have zero idea?
Dragon in quotation marks.
A dragon?
Big quotation marks. It's... Okay, so the body, I can, for a puppet mascot for a kid's film, I could buy that, most of his torso and body. Yeah, that's a dragon. He's got, the scaly spines and the tail on the back.
Hey, editing Grady, throw up an image here while Campion's talking about it.
And his head reminds me of, what, like that Japanese yokai, the kappa? You know, the turtles with like the weird hair and the bowl heads and the wide mouths.
Look, let me just say, Barney the dinosaur.
But it looks like it at least resembles a facsimile of a dinosaur, Grady.
If you took Barney the dinosaur, and I'm going to do this in editing right now. Editing Grady, you're going to hate me. Take Barney the dinosaur, change all of its purple to yellow, boom, you got Pufnstuf. Prove me wrong.
I'm pretty sure you just have a jaundiced Barney, but it still looks like a dinosaur. It has the rough shape of a dinosaur, Grade. Its head has the rough shape of a dinosaur. This head, they just took two separate costumes and smashed them together.
Look, I'm surprised that Pufnstuf's costume is the one you have an issue with, because there's a lot of other things to also have an issue with.
I am getting there, Grady. This is a long list. And there's two little helper things, Clang and what was the other one's name?
Cling and Clang.
Cling and Clang. Did you at any point in your life realize that they're supposed to be bells?
From the names, not from the costumes.
Before I just said they're bells, did you realize they were bells, Grady?
My official answer is
The only reason I know that they're bells, the only reason anyone knows that they're bells, is because the daughter of one of the creators said, oh yeah, they're supposed to be bells. And then everyone else is just like, oh, that's what they are. Okay. Nobody got it, Grady.
Look.
Like, they have the shape, right? And they have the names. But you look at their faces and it's just like, are they supposed to be skin-coloured frog people? Are they like Pufnstuf, where he's just a frog that looked like he f***ed a lizard? Or why are they dressed as bobbies? Why are they, if they're bells, why are they dressed as bobbies, Grady? Why are they dressed as London bobbies?
I don't have an answer for you. Okay. And I'm sure you have 50 million problems with these characters. I just want to run down these characters' names here. We got Freddy the Flute, Cling and Clang, Wilhelmina W. Witchypoo, Orson Vulture, Seymour Spider, Stupid Bat, Dr. Blinky, Judy Frog, Pop Lolly, Ludicrous Lion, Tick Tock, Grandfather Clock, Miss Wristwatch, the Hippie Ants, and there's Shirley Pufnstuf, his sister, I believe.
Does she show up in the movie?
Yep, she's got curly hair and looks like Pufnstuf.
I blanked on her. Oh wow, okay, just googled her. Horrifying. Even more horrifying than Pufnstuf. I didn't think that was possible. Alright.
There's the good trees, which includes a hippie tree. And a Native American tree. And then there's some evil trees as well. And we can't forget the winds. Luckily in the movie, the only one to show up was the West Wind, which is only slightly racist compared to some of the other winds.
Who's a cowboy?
I would like to point out that, not in the movie, but in the TV show, there is north, south, east, and west winds, and the east wind is voiced by a white man with a Chinese accent.
Oh joy. Oh, joyest of joys, Grady. Still not the most egregious thing in this film.
Oh no, I want to save a whole section for that. I'm pretty sure we're talking about the same thing here.
I'm talking about the project as a whole, but...
Oh. I'm talking about a certain rat that we will talk about later. But, like, I guess from the project as a whole, I still enjoyed it. My partners who watched it with me still enjoyed it. It's not a, like, ultimate classic that you want to go back to and watch 50 million times, but it sounds like you did not enjoy the film in any way.
Grady, the skeleton guards are just people in black leotards with cardboard in front of them.
It was the 70s, okay? It was like 5 years until they made Star Wars.
Actually, hang on. When was Jason and the Argonauts made? I need to check this out.
I also don't know what year they made Star Wars in, so that might be wrong. 70...
70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70... 70 77? 74?
Okay, 7 years until they made
Jason and the Argonauts was like a decade before this. I know this movie didn't have anywhere near the budget or talent as that movie did. But still, if Jason and the Argonauts in the 60s can make really good looking stop motion skeletons, they can do a bit better than cardboard on black spandex.
Look, I got nothing. This was a kid's movie made with the exact same level of costuming that you would see on something like Barney the Dinosaur. It is what I keep going back to. That little green triceratops isn't the greatest costume in the world either. It's all just lovely practical costumes that do not keep up on the 4K, but maybe on a little CRT monitor in 480p back in the day might have looked fine.
I refuse to believe there is any definition in which this doesn't look horrifying.
Look, we'll get it, we'll compress it, and we'll put it
Pufnstuf
there.
have big bags under his eyes like he hasn't slept in a week?
That's your biggest problem still?
No, I have many problems, Grady. I'm
They're
just
green
working my way through the
accents.
list.
Okay, they're
Still not
important.
as horrifying as his sister, though. His sister
Now you have a new least favorite.
looks like Miss Pac-Man in a dress.
Alrighty. One piece I did want to...
If a human looked like that, I'd advocate for euthanasia, Grady.
We're going through the costuming, and I just wanted to point out Witch Hazel's costuming. She just had a plastic red rat sitting in her hair,
Yeah.
and then later on
Yeah.
got 2 more plastic grey rats on the sides.
Yeah.
I will admit, the costuming leaves a little bit to be desired.
A lot of this movie. There's a lot of this movie that leaves to be desired.
Look, most of my notes I've got left are good notes, okay? I think it's good. Is there anything you want to get out? I don't want to dominate the conversation about this crazy movie.
Okay. So
Other than the rat.
When I was I like to do this with new movies that I'm watching, where I just randomly skip forward to a random part of the movie just to see what's going on out of context, because I think it's fun to, oh wow, this is really weird and out of context. I wonder what this is going to be like when I finally catch up and it makes sense. I skipped to the part where Witchy Poo disguises herself to sneak into Pufnstuf's home. What was the name she called herself? I don't remember. It was something really dumb.
I don't remember exactly. But it was when she was the flower, I assume.
No, not the flower. That's
when she was doing the dancing stuff.
Yeah, was it Boogaloo or Betty Boogaloo or something?
Something like that.
Something along. It's not that, but it's something along those lines. And they just start dancing, and I looked at it, Grady, and I'm just like, wow, I can't wait for that to make sense. And then I caught up to it, and it's just like, no, this still doesn't make sense. Why is she offering free dance lessons as a way to get inside his house? Why did he let her inside? This is an island with like 20 people. How do you not, if you see someone you don't recognize, how do you not know that that's the witch?
Look, it's a children's movie. Okay, and when I'm talking children's movies, sometimes we talk about, the 8 to 15 crowd. This is a children's movie. This is presumably G-rated, what was meant to be watched by, 4-year-olds, okay? It's the same. Campion, how many people showed up in Pokemon that had one with blue hair and one with pink hair, and Ash went, oh golly gosh, I can't tell, this is Team Rocket? How many times?
All the time, because Officer Jenny has blue hair and Nurse Joy has pink hair.
And they show up with a Meowth, and he doesn't think it's weird that there's a Meowth there.
True.
Disguises have always been stupid.
Grady. It's a Meowth in a disguise.
Disguises in children's shows are always stupid. You just have to suspend your disbelief and believe that the character is also stupid.
There's 20 people in the Pokemon world, Grady.
Look, I don't know how many people there are on Living Island, okay? It could be other people. They found a Freddy. There could be more Freddys out there.
I didn't like this movie, Grady.
I got you didn't like this movie.
Clear. I did not like this movie. It grated on me. It really grated on me as it went along, because this is something that a lot of kids' films do that I find really irritating, where there's no peaks and valleys to the intensity or the loudness. It's just loud all the time, and they're just running around and they don't stop. It's just loud, and they don't sit still, and it's annoying. It's like an actual child, Grady. It's like I'm spending time with an actual child. Although with an actual child, I can talk to them and, reason with them at the very least. But I can't do that to a movie. A movie just keeps going no matter what I do.
It was a good movie.
Agree to disagree, Grady.
I got a couple of points. There was one particular scene, I think it was when they just, won the first time, when they pretended to be firemen or whatever, and they got back and they did a big dance number in the town.
Okay, pretend to be firemen, Grady. They were wearing red tarps with holes cut on the side.
They were also the actual fire crew for the island. Thank you very much. But the gopher. I don't know who played the gopher. It looks like Billy Barty played the gopher, who is a dwarf. Unfortunately passed away in 2000. But when he was performing that role, he put his all in it. My note says, that gopher goes hard. He didn't want to just be a gopher standing off to the side doing the choreography. He put effort in. I want to give credit to Billy Barty for that gopher dance. Okay, you can poop on this movie as much as you want, but that gopher danced.
Fine, I'll give you the gopher. You can have that one thing.
Thank you.
But I'd also like to point out that every song in this movie is kind of crap. And it's not just me saying that. Jack Wilde, who plays the lead, Jimmy, also hated the songs for this movie.
Yeah, there's only one song that I took note of that I liked, and that was Witch Hazel's song in the end, called Different. And you're making me use all my good now, so it's all my bad notes left. It wasn't the best performance or anything like that, but because I'd already heard the song multiple times, I sat and just listened to the lyrics, and I fully support the lyrics, and it was weirdly progressive for a 1970s film, especially given what was in the room at the time that she was singing, which again I will get to. But it was, I think, a well-written song. Maybe not the best performed song, but definitely a decent message and a decent stuff like that. Because I think the person who played Witch Hazel was actually a singer. It looks like they worked on soundtrack later on. She was.
In fact, I'm trying to pull up her name. Cass Elliot. She was a part of a rock group, the Mama and Papas, and she was actually inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for that. So nice. She is an accomplished musician in her own right.
Yeah, it looks like she was working on things like the soundtrack, even later on to Free Guy, and stuff like that. So, still working around. And personally, that is my favorite song. I've gone to her IMDb and she's listed as soundtrack for Free Guy.
Didn't that movie just come out?
Yeah. Make your own kind of music.
She died in 1974, Grady.
Look, they may have just used her song.
They probably did. She died in 1974. That's 4 years after this movie was released.
Well, they kept using her songs constantly, because I see here, after 1974, there is still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 different usages of her songs in TV and movie.
Well, to be fair, she was a part of a popular group back in the day. So
it does look like Dream a Little Dream and Make Your Own Kind of Music seems to be the most commonly used songs in different things.
Yeah. I seriously doubt she rose from the grave just to do...
She might have.
Just to do a sort of okay Ryan Reynolds movie.
But no, I quite like that song. So I will stand by that song out of the soundtrack. I could not tell you any other song that was in that movie.
I mean, every time I try to remember, all that I remember is that Jimmy's thick Cockney accent just piercing through everything else. And to be fair, I'm not really crapping on him because he is a genuinely talented performer. In fact, I haven't seen the movie, but I did recognize from this he was in like the film adaptation for Oliver Twist.
Yeah, that's heavily featured in the trailer.
Yeah, he was he played the Artful Dodger in that. So he is again, I haven't actually seen the movie, but as far as I can tell from the reception to that, he is a genuinely talented performer in his own right.
He didn't do a lot later because I don't want to get too much into like his personal issues and stuff, but he had a lot and didn't continue on afterwards. But yeah, for the Artful Dodger role, like he got a nomination for an Academy Award, a BAFTA Award, and a Golden Globe, all for that role at 16. So pretty decent of a pickup.
It's also wild that he's like 18 in this movie.
Oh yeah,
he looks like he's 11.
He really pulls off the playing younger than he is.
Yeah. Apparently, I was doing a bit of reading. Apparently, his voice didn't break till he was like in his 20s, so like early 20s.
Handy for films like this for sure.
Yes. Apparently, let him like do his falsetto for a long time.
I guess all of my positive notes, because we talked about Witch Hazel's different, is all negative stuff now. So unfortunately, I have to switch. I'll still defend this film, parts of it for sure, but there was one part where one of my partners perked up on it. It was the flower witch disguise, and like a bee comes past, and then a bird comes past, and she's like, I've heard of the bird and the bees, but this is crazy. And she says, a flower just isn't safe around here. And immediately they turned to me and they went, is that a rape joke?
I didn't pick up on that, so that's all on you.
Look, I watched the film with them. It quite honestly could be.
Yeah.
I would not put it past it. But that was just one of the, like, weirder lines that, like, you could pick up on in the film, because it has, obviously, we've already talked about, like, the stoner connotations throughout the entire film. It is, whether they want to admit just Pufnstuf's name or what, the whole thing is drug culture, the movie. And do you got one more bit you want to talk about before I go hard on my last bit?
I'm just going to let you go hard. I've got a few more things, but that's mostly just wrap-up stuff, so
because
I'll let you go.
Look, if this video, we don't monetize our podcasts on YouTube, at the moment at least, but this part will remove any and all monetization, because I would like to talk about the Boss Witch's henchman, which is unequivocally, unarguably, a Nazi rat. The rat is dressed as a Nazi. The rat has a Nazi shoulder band. And the rat continually sig-hails the entire way throughout the film and talks in a very thick German accent. Campion, this film came out in 1970. Nazi jokes were not the go.
Well, they still aren't, really.
Well, they were less the go.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue because, like, I just quickly did a Google image search, right? Like, the first 3 images of him doing the salute. It's just... you can't get around that. It is the obvious red armband. It's like, why is there a Nazi rat? Why did they put a Nazi rat in this movie?
I have no idea. I did not remember it. As a child, I did not know there was a Nazi rat in this film. We were absolutely sidelined when the Nazi rat came up, and that's why I was talking about the witch singing about different was hilarious, because she was doing that when right opposite her was a Nazi rat dancing to the song. Okay? Ever since the boss witch showed up, all I could see when I was watching this movie was the Nazi rat is right there. And I'm 99% sure I remember him saying Sieg Heil in the film as he was doing the salute. I don't know what the filmmakers were thinking in this children's film to put such heavy Nazi imagery.
Hey, we gotta give him credit. Maybe, like, I don't know, a decade later, Art Spiegelman watched this, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna put that in a comic book, and that's how we got Mouse.
Yeah, maybe there's a shot. I don't think that's the case. Like, this puppet...
I don't think it's the case either, but hey.
If you Google, and let me note this time code down to put up something on the screen here, but if you Google Pufnstuf Rat, they ended up reusing that costume as Funky Rat later on in their other show.
Oh, you're right.
And they took all of the Nazi imagery off the rat. He does not have a skull and crossbones on his hat anymore. He does not have the armband. For the Boogaloos is the other show. Yeah. And still speaks in a German accent.
But hey, now he's just a regular old German rather than a literal Nazi.
Yep. Look, this whole section of the podcast might get us into shit on YouTube. I'm sure the algorithm's about to bury this video, but you could not ignore that.
Because all of our other stuff is just getting pushed so hard. Ugh, don't want to kill that push, Grady.
Look, not everything can be a Blighttown champion, okay? But I don't know,
if we start talking about if we relate the... Grady, this was the Dark Souls of children's films. Do you have any idea how hard this movie was to finish?
Look, you can't bring this episode back, okay? This episode has gone too far down. It is gone.
I don't know. I think if we just make this about Dark Souls, I think the algorithm will level out there.
I think we have said the word Nazi too many times. I think I've said the word Sieg Heil too many times. It is lost. This is completely gone. This episode is a wash. Next episode, start talking about Dark Souls. Maybe the algorithm can like the channel as a whole, maybe.
Ghost in the Shell is the Dark Souls of anime.
There you go. But honestly, this film, like, I enjoyed it. I can't tell if it was out of nostalgia. The two people, my partners who watched it with me, enjoyed it. They obviously not the greatest film, like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, but enjoyed it. Didn't hate me for putting it on, and they'd never seen it before, so they didn't have the nostalgia blindness. One of them did say it probably would have been better if she was high, but nonetheless, everybody was sober while watching this film.
I wish I was high while I was watching this. That would have been fantastic.
We revisit this episode and we rewatch while high, and we have a different commentary.
When weed finally gets legalized in New Zealand, this podcast is going to take a major shift. Movies that we watch well baked.
But overall, I still enjoyed the film. I thought it was fine. The Nazi rat, I am not excusing in any way. But
it's funny because it's like, oh, it was the 70s. It's like, yeah, it was 30 years after World War II. We still had most of our World War II vets then. I don't understand why this would have been less acceptable then.
Yeah, we worked out it was 25 years. It released 25 years after the end of World War II.
It's just...
Look, that's my final words is, despite the Nazi rat, and despite the vaguely racist West Wind and the East Wind that wasn't in this, and the horrible costuming, and the fact that everybody appears to be high on shrooms the entire film, I still enjoyed it. The people I watched it with still enjoyed it. But I fully understand people who do not enjoy this film. I have tried to watch this with mates when I was in university, and they did not enjoy it. It tanked. They made it half an hour before forcing me to turn off the film. It's different strokes for different folks, for sure.
Yes. And, I'll give it to this. This isn't the worst movie we've looked at. Well, actually.
As he rapidly reviews back what films. It's not the worst.
What do you actually? That's interesting. What do you think is the worst thing we've reviewed so far?
The worst thing we've reviewed so far? Oh, that's a tough one.
Because I'm leaning into this, Grady. I'm sorry. This
Oh,
is
no.
I'm sorry to crap all over your childhood.
Well, guess what? I'm leaning into Monty Python.
Oh, actually. Yeah, actually.
If it's, like, the overall film, I'd lean into Monty Python. If it's the acceptability of the film in 2022, Idiocracy by miles.
Okay, Idiocracy was a satire, Grady, that I think it can get away with a lot of the stuff in that film. And I'd like to point out that Mike Judge, the creator of it, is aggressively liberal and left-wing, alright? So, I'll stand up for that, but not Monty Python. That was a genuine trial to sit through.
Yeah.
As much as it pains me to say it.
So, all we've learned is that you just don't like things that either of us enjoyed as a childhood film then, because I loved Pufnstuf and still do. You hate it. You hate Monty Python.
I liked Willy Wonka. That was a great movie.
Look, I'm sorry that you didn't like H.R. Pufnstuf. I'm sorry you don't have that childlike wonder to enjoy the orange-haired, green under-eye bag, yellow dinosaur that is wearing a tiny cowboy hat.
It looked like a rejected Digimon, Grady.
It's high praise. If you said a rejected Pokemon, that would have hurt. Hashtag Digimon way better.
Actually, it's way better.
Look, as much as I'd love to continue talking about
this... You want to
this...
just do the Digimon movie next week?
There is a schedule, Campion. We remain with the schedule.
Also, I would love to... Also, I actually... That was a joke, right? I actually don't want to watch the Digimon movie. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Trash.
Okay.
So bad. I'm talking specifically about the English Digimon movie.
Of course.
Where they got 3 different Digimon movies and just smashed them together into like one massive incoherent mess. It's all. We'll put it on the list. It's terrible, but I think we'd get a kick out of it. Sorry, where were we going? I just derailed.
I was telling you to wrap it all up. I was telling you to go through your topics.
Okay. So just some ending bits of trivia there. Most of the cast of this film is dead, which is to be expected considering how long ago it was made. The most recent of which to die, actually, funnily enough, was Billie Hayes, who played Witchy Poo. She actually passed away in April last year, and she was actually working almost right up until her death. She spent decades and decades doing, acting roles and voice work and stuff. Nothing super big jumped out at me. But it was still a lot of smaller roles and a lot of shows that I still recognized. Stuff like Transformers, Shrek. I believe she also did like The Black Cauldron. I also noticed that they did have her do like a bunch of like witch kind of roles. I don't think it was necessarily she was typecast. I think it was more just like casting gags and stuff. Because like, as much as I dislike this film, her witch's cackle is pretty on point. If I could do that for like my D&D games and stuff, I would be very happy.
You should just record that audio and put it on a soundboard.
They actually... I wouldn't be surprised if people were just sampling her witch's cackle and playing it.
And before you finish wrapping up, I just got to point out the way that Pufnstuf scrunched his mouth when he was concerned. I'll give you that. That was horrible, creepy, and distressing. Yeah. And created a Pufnstussy. Keep going.
Yes. We mentioned before Cass Elliot, who played the Witch Hazel. She had a very, very long, successful music career with the Mama and Papas, who were inducted. She was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Sadly, she passed away only a couple of years after this film's release. I'm not saying it was the experience on this movie that did it. I'm just implying it, Grady.
Of course.
Yes, of course. Where did I actually put him? I think it was... Was it Billy Barty?
Campion's thinking really hard as he runs through his notes right now because he wants to get the hell off this episode.
As you mentioned before, Billy Barty, who played the Gopher, he also did a bunch of roles. Most of what he did was like voice work. I believe he was in The Little Mermaid. Just let me quickly.
Oh, now he's got to run off and fact check, extending the episode longer.
Because I just remembered Grady, and I have to make sure.
This host prep, man. Like, every time I come into it with notes, and this guy's just fumbling through it. Doesn't even remember if Billy Barty was in The Little Mermaid or not.
Okay, looks like he wasn't in The Little Mermaid, but he was in a bunch of Disney stuff. He was also in the original Lord of the Rings animated movie. He did some voice work for that. Of course, probably the most well-known people from this movie is, of course, Jack Wilde, the lead, who we mentioned before that he was previously cast in Oliver Twist as the Artful Dodger, which he won numerous awards for. The film itself, it did okay, I guess. Okay, trying to find the numbers for the budget and stuff was a bit difficult. I had to do a bit of digging, but as far as I could tell, it was made on a budget that, for inflation, is around about $6 million. That's adjusting for inflation, and on the box office, it only made about $2 million back from that. So didn't do particularly well, but from what I could tell, the whole point behind this, it wasn't so much to make like a big smash at the box office. It was to make something that TV stations and stuff could run in syndication for years and years and years, and then they get royalties off of that. Which, as far as I can tell, they have, and they've actually made quite a lot. Because you watched this on TV as a kid, didn't you?
Yeah, I watched this on TV. Like, when I looked up their home media releases, it was like really recent.
Yeah, it's had just like Willy Wonka, it's had a very long run as a children's movie on television. So it was able to really find an audience there, apparently. I don't know. The audience didn't include me. I mean, it's got pop figurines, so, clearly it has some measure of success. And just the last little bit of trivia, Pufnstuf, it actually had a sequel series that started running in 2015. I believe it ran on Netflix, called Mutton Stuff, which is about Pufnstuf's nephew, who's a dog. How does a dragon have a dog as a nephew, Grady?
Sounds perfectly fine to me.
Yeah. And they even had like a crossover where they got the cast from HR Pufnstuf to come in to Mutton Stuff. They kind of interacted and stuff. Not the original cast, obviously, because most of them were dead at that point. But they had like the costumes come in and interact. And seeing Pufnstuf's ancient costume coming in with all the more modern ones, it's a bit jarring. But then again, Mutton Stuff's costumes isn't exactly, top tier, so it's not that out of place.
You finished spitting all your facts now?
I'm finished spitting, Grady.
Then it is time, I guess, to talk about our next film and where we're going to be headed after this episode.
Yes, we've mentioned this a few times during the episode. I've mentioned it like once during this episode. Are you going to cut that out?
No, we've got to keep everything in.
Living with that mistake. The next movie we're going to be covering is something I've actually been looking forward to for quite some time. It is an anime classic, considered one of the greatest cyberpunk properties ever made. We are going to be covering the classic Ghost in the Shell, which I am very looking forward to. I've heard it's a really good film, and I hope we don't end up hating it, because we often end up hating stuff that other people really like, and it makes me feel kind of bad. I want to go back to liking stuff, Grady. I'm kind of sick of being a negative Nancy over here.
Well, I've heard that it's the Dark Souls of anime. But yeah, it's one that neither of us have watched coming into it. As you say, we've had a couple of rough episodes back to back that have not been the greatest show of stuff, so hoping that we can have a good one.
We haven't had the greatest reactions
That's true.
To stuff that we've watched. So.
Yeah, obviously we had a good one with Willy Wonka, but coming off that we had Monty Python and we had Pufnstuf, which you didn't enjoy. So hopefully with Ghost in the Shell,
which neither of us enjoyed, which surprised me greatly.
Yeah, and the movie after Ghost in the Shell, which I will not spoil, is one sure to be enjoyed by both of us, so we should hopefully be turning it all around with Ghost in the Shell next episode.
Yeah, let's get this back on the road. We started this out just being really positive and liking things, and now we're just turning into like grumpy old men that just hate everything, Grady.
Look, I'm old.
Yeah, we're old. Anyways, that is going to do it.
Keeping that in.
Even my tongue's... Oh, fuck you. Even my tongue's sick of this. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today here on Lexicon of Lore. I was going to call us something else. We are not called that anymore. We stick with this current name. Thank you for joining us so much.
It's been called that.
Yes. On Cold Potato. Hope you enjoyed yourself. As always, I am Campion. This is my good buddy Grady. We have been the Lexicon of Lore, and I hope to see you all next time.
Am I allowed to say Sig Heil on YouTube?